The day of my father's funeral dawned with a heavy sky, mirroring the weight on my heart. The air was thick with grief, yet among the mourners, a conspicuous void echoed the absence of my husband, Kevin, and his family. The cold pews seemed colder as I awaited their arrival, but the minutes slipped away, and their familiar faces remained elusive. In the solemn quiet of the chapel, my sister-in-law, Hannah, whispered, "Priscilla, do you see them anywhere?" I shook my head, my eyes scanning the faces in vain. "No, they're not here. It's like they don't care." As the priest began his eulogy, the missing seats reserved for Kevin, my mother-in-law, and the rest of the family became an unmistakable symbol of their indifference. The eulogies blended into a somber symphony, but their absence resonated louder than any spoken words. Hannah's voice cut through the hushed atmosphere. "Did they even consider what this means to you? Your own husband, not here for your father's farewell." They said, "We're not blood related," as if that justifies their absence. I whispered back, bitterness lacing my words. As the service progressed, a knot tightened in my chest. Kevin's indifference, his family's callousness, it was an unveiled absence that exposed the fault lines in our relationships. When the ceremony concluded, and mourners offered their condolences, Hannah and I were left grappling with the silent void where family support should have been. In the cemetery, under a gray sky, I couldn't contain my frustration any longer. "Where were you?" I demanded as Kevin approached, his expression unreadable. He shrugged, an infuriating nonchalance in his demeanor. "We didn't think it was necessary. Funerals are for family." My voice rose, fueled by a mixture of grief and anger. "Aren't we family? Didn't Dad treat you like a son?" Kevin's reply stung. "We're not blood related, Priscilla. It's not the same." Hannah, always more assertive, chimed in, "You were treated better than family, and this is how you repay him." Their cold rationalization unveiled a truth I hadn't been ready to confront. As mourners dispersed, leaving me to grieve alone, the emptiness echoed their callous words, "We're not blood related." It was a revelation that cut deeper than any grave, marking the beginning of a journey into retaliation and self-discovery. In the aftermath of the funeral, Hannah and I found ourselves nursing wounds that extended beyond the loss of my father. The callous absence of Kevin and his family planted seeds of anger and betrayal in our hearts. One evening, over cups of bitter coffee, we decided it was time to sow the seeds of retaliation. Hannah slammed her cup on the table, frustration etched across her face. "Priscilla, we can't let them get away with this. We have to make them feel what we felt." The idea of revenge hung in the air, tantalizing yet daunting. But how? I questioned, my voice barely above a whisper. "We hit them where it hurts," Hannah declared, her eyes gleaming with determination. "They'll understand the pain of absence." Our plan unfolded like a clandestine operation. The first act was a silent protest, a refusal to attend any funerals of Kevin's family. As news of the passing of Kevin's aunt reached us, we stood our ground. The expectation to mourn alongside people who had callously disregarded our grief was met with a resounding silence. One day, over coffee once again, Hannah leaned in, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Priscilla, it's time for the second act. We need to free ourselves from these heartless men." The second act involved initiating divorces, a move that would jolt our husbands into realizing the gravity of their actions. As we drafted our letters, the weight of liberation mingled with the sadness of severing ties. "They need to understand that we won't be shackled by their indifference," Hannah declared, her pen slashing through the paper. In the quiet of our shared pain, we crafted our messages, explaining our decisions and leaving behind the echo of our footsteps as we walked away from marriages that had grown cold. The letters were both a farewell and a declaration of independence. As we sealed the envelopes, Hannah looked at me with a grin. "Now for the third act, it's time to expose their heartlessness to everyone." Our plan escalated as we decided to reveal the truth about Kevin and his family's reasoning to our relatives. In a meeting with aunts, uncles, and cousins, Hannah and I would unveil the callous words that had shattered our expectations of familial support. Their excuse was that we're not blood-related, Hannah said with a bitter chuckle. Let's see if the rest of the family buys that reasoning. As the seeds of retaliation took root, Hannah and I braced ourselves for the storm we were about to unleash on the ones who had callously left us to grieve alone. And so on the day of the funeral, we stood united in our decision. The absentees were noted, and whispers rustled through the gathering as people realized we were missing. Relatives exchanged glances, a silent acknowledgement of our conspicuous absence. Aunt Helen, always the outspoken one, approached us with concern etched on her face. Priscilla, Hannah, where were you? It's family, you know. Hannah's response was a steely gaze. Family? Is that what you call it? Tell me, Aunt Helen, where was our family when we needed them the most? I added, we're not blood related apparently, so we thought it best not to intrude on family affairs. The shock on Aunt Helen's face was palpable, but we turned away, unyielding in our resolve. As the ceremony proceeded, we felt the weight of our absence becoming a statement, a silent protest against the callousness that had marked our grieving process. In the days that followed, whispers of our defiance circulated through family gatherings. The silent protest had begun to sow the seeds of discontent, and the realization that we were not willing to play by their rules reverberated through the family grapevine. One evening, over a cup of coffee, Hannah mused, they're starting to understand that their actions have consequences. Our absence spoke louder than any words. I nodded, a sense of satisfaction mingling with the lingering pain. Our silent protest had set the stage for the subsequent acts of retaliation, and as we faced the consequences of our choices, a newfound strength blossomed within us, fueled by the resilience of those who refused to be overlooked. As the echoes of our silent protest reverberated through family gatherings, Hannah and I found ourselves standing on the precipice of the second act of our retaliation plan, the initiation of divorces. The decision to free ourselves from the shackles of unfeeling men and indifferent families weighed heavily on our hearts, yet liberation beckoned us forward. One evening, sitting in Hannah's living room, we faced the daunting task of drafting letters that would sever ties and declare our independence. The air was thick with tension as we put pen to paper, committing our feelings and frustrations to words. Hannah glanced at me, her eyes reflecting the turmoil within. Priscilla, are you sure about this? Once these letters are sent, there's no turning back. I took a deep breath, the gravity of our decision settling in. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I can't continue in a marriage where I'm treated as an afterthought, and my family is dismissed as inconsequential. Hannah nodded in understanding, a silent affirmation of our shared resolve. The room echoed with the scratching of pens against paper as our letters unfolded, a poignant symphony of liberation. The first words of my letter were both a farewell and a declaration. Kevin, by the time you read this, you'll find an empty house, a reflection of the void you've left in my life. I can no longer be tethered to a marriage where my grief is disregarded, and our connection dismissed with callous words. Hannah's letter, though different in tone, mirrored the sentiment of emancipation. To my soon-to-be ex-husband, your absence during my darkest moments has revealed the hollowness of our connection. I refuse to be bound by indifference any longer. As we sealed our envelopes, the letters became vessels carrying the weight of our broken dreams and unfulfilled expectations. The decision to free ourselves from these heartless men was both liberating and heart-wrenching. A week later, as the divorce proceedings commenced, Kevin confronted me with a bewildered expression. Priscilla, is this some kind of joke? Divorce? What happened? I met his gaze, a steely resolve in my eyes. It's not a joke, Kevin. This is the consequence of your actions, or rather, your inactions. Our marriage couldn't survive the callousness you displayed during my father's funeral. Hannah faced a similar confrontation, her soon-to-be ex-husband struggling to comprehend the sudden turn of events. Hannah, why are you doing this? Can't we work through whatever issues we have? Hannah's response was firm. The issues run deep, and your family's indifference is at the core. I won't continue in a marriage where my pain is dismissed and our connection deemed insignificant. The letters of liberation became more than just documents. They were declarations of autonomy, signaling the end of marriages tainted by indifference and the beginning of a journey towards self-discovery and healing. The third act of retaliation was a pivotal moment, an unmasking of the indifference that had festered within Kevin and his family. Armed with evidence of their heartless rationale, Hannah and I orchestrated a meeting with relatives, unveiling the truth that had fueled our silent protest and the decision to divorce. In a family gathering that felt more like a tribunal, we faced aunts, uncles, and cousins, their curious eyes fixated on us. Hannah's voice cut through the murmurs. "We have something to share, something that explains our recent decisions." As we played the recorded conversation, where Kevin callously declared, "We're not blood-related," the room fell into stunned silence. The revelation hung in the air like a dark cloud, exposing the heartlessness that had fueled our retaliation. Aunt Margaret, a distant relative known for her straightforwardness, broke the silence. "Kevin, is this true? Did you really say that about Priscilla's father's funeral?" Kevin, caught off guard, stuttered, "Well, it's not that simple. We didn't think it was necessary." Aunt Margaret's gaze turned to me, sympathy etched on her face. "Priscilla, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." I nodded, my voice firm. "It's not just about one funeral. It's about a pattern of disregard for my family and our connection." Hannah chimed in, her tone unwavering. "And it's not just Kevin. His family shares the same sentiment." Uncle Richard, known for his reserved nature, spoke up. "This is unacceptable, Kevin. Family is not just about blood. It's about the bonds we forge, the connections we cherish." The room erupted into a cacophony of opinions, each relative expressing their shock and disapproval. Kevin attempted to defend himself, but the weight of his callous words hung over him like a dark cloud. As the clamor subsided, Aunt Margaret turned to Hannah. "And what about your husband? Is he in agreement with this sentiment?" Hannah's gaze never wavered. "He shares the same perspective. We've endured enough, and it's time to stand up for ourselves." Aunt Margaret, nodding in understanding, addressed the gathering. "It seems there's a deeper issue here, one that needs to be addressed. Family should be a source of support, not a reason for abandonment." The impact of unmasking the indifference rippled through the family, and as we left the gathering, Hannah whispered to me, "They needed to know the truth." Our silence wouldn't have changed anything. In the aftermath, the family dynamics shifted. Kevin and his family faced not only our condemnation, but also the disapproval of relatives who had once been oblivious to their callousness. The consequences of their actions became a weight they couldn't easily shake off. One evening, Kevin confronted me, his tone desperate. "Priscilla, can't we talk about this? Maybe we can work through it." My response was resolute. "The time for talking has long passed, Kevin. Your indifference has consequences, and we're not willing to bear them any longer." The unmasking of indifference had laid bare the flaws in our familial ties, setting the stage for the final act of our retaliation, the unraveling of a marriage marked by heartlessness and the forging of a new beginning. As the echoes of our retaliation reverberated through family gatherings, the divorce proceedings unfolded with unexpected smoothness. Hannah and I found ourselves at the crossroads of liberation, and the decisions we made during this period would shape our futures. The courtroom, a stage for the dissolution of marriages, became the battleground for the final act of our retaliation. Kevin, clad in a somber suit, faced me across the room, the distance between us mirroring the emotional chasm that had grown over the years. The judge's gavel echoed through the room as the divorce was finalized. I felt a strange mix of liberation and grief, the end of a chapter that held both joy and heartache. As the legalities were concluded, Kevin approached me, his eyes reflecting a myriad of emotions. "Priscilla, can't we reconsider this?" he pleaded, desperation evident in his voice. I met his gaze, my expression unwavering. "Kevin, this is the consequence of your actions. Our marriage couldn't withstand the indifference and the callousness. It's time for both of us to move on. Hannah faced a similar exchange with her now ex-husband. As they parted ways, he implored, "Hannah, is this really what you want? We can work through our issues." Hannah, resolute, responded, "The issues run deep, and it's not just about us. Your family's indifference played a significant role. I need to move forward, and so should you." The divorce became a poignant marker in our lives, the end of marriages that had grown cold and indifferent. Yet, amid the dissolution, a surprising bond emerged between Hannah and me. United by shared experiences and the courage to break free, our friendship deepened. In the quiet moments after the divorce, Hannah and I found solace in each other's company. We shared stories of the pain we endured, the liberation we felt, and the uncertain yet hopeful paths that lay ahead. Our bond, once strained by shared suffering, blossomed into a resilient friendship. Over coffee in Hannah's living room, we reflected on the events that led us to this moment. Hannah's eyes sparkled with a newfound strength. "Priscilla, who would have thought that our retaliation would lead to such liberation?" I smiled, sipping my coffee. We needed to break free, not just from our marriages, but from the indifference that held us captive. It's a fresh start for both of us. As we navigated the complexities of singlehood, Hannah and I promised to be architects of our own happiness. The divorce, though marked by pain, became a stepping stone towards self-discovery and newfound freedom. One day over lunch, Hannah looked at me with a grin. "Priscilla, life after divorce isn't so bad, is it? We're free to choose our paths." I nodded. "Absolutely, Hannah. Let's embrace this freedom and build the lives we've always wanted." Our motto became a guiding light: to be happy, to be free. In the wake of divorce, Hannah and I found strength in each other, and as we faced the uncertainties of the future, our bond remained unbreakable. One day, over a leisurely brunch, Hannah looked at me with a twinkle in her eye. "Priscilla, life after divorce isn't so bad, is it? We're free to choose our paths." I chuckled. "Absolutely, Hannah. Let's continue to embrace this freedom and build the lives we've always wanted. Here's to new beginnings and endless possibilities." As we toasted to the future, the echoes of our past faded away, and the promise of a new beginning unfolded before us, a canvas awaiting the strokes of resilience, self-discovery, and unbridled happiness.